Our text today begins with the Gospel of St. John chapter 5, verse 14. Afterward Jesus findeth him in the temple, and said unto him, Behold, thou art made whole. Sin no more, lest a worse thing come unto thee. Jesus finds this man and tells him that if he does not stop his sinning, a worse thing may come upon him than the crippled condition from which he was healed. What do we make of this? Is sickness the result of sin? Are all our sicknesses a matter of God judging us because of our sins? The answer is at least twofold. There may be more folds to this than two, but two are all I am going to comment on now. The first is that all sickness is indeed the result of sin. Had it not been for the sin of Adam and Eve, there would be no sickness or sin in the human race. Or that is, there would have been no sickness and sin until someone else had sinned. The soul that sins, it shall die, God told the human race. The law provided man a theoretical way to put away sickness from among them by putting away sin and obeying God in all things. That did not happen, of course. Salvation by grace does not attempt to reform the old man, but provides salvation through death, burial, resurrection into a new life. Salvation by grace does not remove the curse of mortality from Adam's children as long as they are alive in this old creation. Freedom from sickness depends upon their coming into the family of God by new birth, which will eventually result in the resurrection of the new immortal body into the new creation. In that new body and that new creation, there will be no more sickness and no more death. St. Paul comments on this in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 42 through 55, when he says, So also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown in corruption, it is raised in incorruption. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. There is a natural body, and there is a spiritual body. And so it is written, The first man, Adam, was made a living soul. The last Adam was made a quickening spirit. Howbeit that was not first, which is spiritual, but that which is natural, and afterward that which is spiritual. The first man is of the earth, earthy. The second man is the Lord from heaven. As is the earthy, such are they also that are earthy, and as is the heavenly, such are they also that are heavenly. And as we have borne the image of the earthy, we shall also bear the image of the heavenly. Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, neither doth corruption inherit incorruption. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, physical entrance into the new creation requires, and we will receive, a new immortal, incorruptible body that is like the body of God Himself. Verses 47 through 49 tell us that unless you are one of those Platonic Gnostic types who believe that all things physical are inferior and that Jesus is not God, but we are not of that cult of vain reasoning. The book of Revelation also comments on this great truth when it tells us in chapter 21, verses 1 through 5, And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride, adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them, and be their God. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. And he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. Sickness is only remitted when Adam's children die. As long as they are alive, sickness remains. That is part of the curse of mortality. Say what you want, you will continue to get sick until you eventually die and leave this world. So in that sense, all sickness is the result of sin. But there is another more local issue that asks the question, when people get sick, does that mean God is punishing them for something? The answer to that is maybe and maybe not. In St. John chapter 9, verses 2 and 3, the disciples asked Jesus, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents. But in 1 Corinthians 11, verses 29 through 31, the Apostle Paul says to the church, For he that eateth and drinketh unworthily eateth and drinketh damnation to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. For this cause many are weak and sickly among you, and many sleep. For if we would judge ourselves, we should not be judged. In this case, sin was causing sickness and sometimes even death. So in summary, all sickness is ultimately the result of original sin and the fallen mind, body, and character with which we are born as sons of Adam. But in specific, any given sickness can just be the result of being mortal and not because we are being punished for any particular sin. A good rule of thumb is that if you are sick and you do not know specifically what it is that God is punishing you for, then it is not a punishment. It is just the lot of mortal men in this imperfect and disease-ridden world. Do not use your imagination here because you are an insecure person with a guilt complex. When God is punishing you for something, you will know what it is. Even so, sickness can be a physical judgment of God against us because of sin. In our society, for example, AIDS is a judgment of God against the warped, vile, and subhuman abomination of sodomy. Everyone who lives in the real world knows that. But, as St. Paul said in Romans 1, verses 26 through 28, those who engage in these subhuman acts do not know it because their minds are rotted out and decayed. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections. For even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature, and likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient. The Greek word for reprobate is adokimos, which means unapproved, rejected, morally worthless, cast off, and subnormal. In other words, if you were to ask the question, how can normal people be sodomites? The answer is that normal people cannot be and are not. You must become an abnormal, subnormal person whose mind has lost all sense of decency and morality. It is a mind that has gone haywire and has fallen completely apart. And people that support and coddle perverts are just as bad and as culpable as they are for abetting them in this sin that the Bible calls a capital crime, for which a righteous government should execute them. That is what God said in Leviticus 20, verse 13. If a man also lie with mankind, as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. Take note that God says the fault is on their own heads, and not on the government that is only carrying out God's will in ridding society of this filthy scourge that will eventually destroy the culture if it is not dealt with. No wonder the ACLU and other cabals of decadent, blasphemous sodomites and lesbians want the 10 Commandments banned from society. Remember that no civilization in history has ever survived the deadly malaises of blasphemy, perversion, and anarchy, which means, of course, that we in the West are traveling on a sinking ship. Many other physical disorders are also the direct results of abuse of alcoholic, smoking, drugs, promiscuity, and so on. This seems to be the case in our text. Jesus tells this man to stop the sin that brought this disease on him, or the next physical judgment will leave him in a worse condition than that from which he was just healed. There is much more that could be said about this matter, but this is a subject within itself, and I'm going to leave it here because it is not the main thrust of the passage, and I do not want to lose the flow of thought. John chapter 5, verse 15. The man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus which had made him whole. After his encounter in the temple, the man was able to go back and tell the Jews that it was Jesus who had healed him and told him to take up his bed and walk. Jesus. Oh yes, they should have known. Wasn't he the one who had driven them out of the temple a year ago and destroyed their merchandise? Wasn't he the fellow who had said he could rebuild the temple in 3 days? They had heard from the Jews in Galilee that he was traveling all up and down the land with his revolutionary ideas. It seems that he was intent on doing these things on the Sabbath. He was defying their ancient customs and telling people they did not have to abide by the rules of the Sabbath. Now he had come back to Jerusalem and deliberately done this right under their noses. Obviously, he was spoiling for a confrontation, and it was equally obvious that he did not intend to leave them alone. Well, if a confrontation was what he wanted, that was what he would get. The Sabbath was at the center of the worship of the Jews. People were put to death in the days of Moses for gathering manna to eat on the Sabbath. Their ancestors had been banished to slavery in Babylon for violating the Sabbath. Now Jesus was mocking them. He was encouraging this man to carry his bed in Jerusalem, where all could see him. It was clear to them now. This was no happenstance. Jesus was deliberately challenging the Jewish religion. His assault on the Sabbath could not be tolerated. They knew how to handle blasphemers and heretics. The law of Moses was clear about it. Put him to death. That was the thing to do. But what was the best way to go about it without causing a firestorm of criticism? The people believed he was a prophet. Some even thought this sacrilegious man was the Messiah. They must be careful and look for the right opportunity. In the meanwhile, maybe a carefully planned program to discredit him would turn the people against him. He must be condemned and shown for the enemy of Jewry that he obviously was. John chapter 5, verse 16. And therefore did the Jews persecute Jesus and sought to slay him because he had done these things on the Sabbath day. They were right about Jesus deliberately challenging their concepts of the Sabbath. They were right about Jesus taking issue with their religion, but they could not have been more wrong about his motives. He was trying to get them to see how they were missing the spirit of the law and to see the sterile deadness of the letter that was resulting from their understanding of it. They were right about the Sabbath being at the heart of the law of Moses. In fact, it was at the center of God's plan for the redemption of the world from the first week of creation. But they were completely wrong about the meaning of the seventh-day Sabbath. Jesus wanted to show them what the Sabbath really meant. Was there any better way to show them how wrong they were about it than their reaction to a man being healed on the Sabbath? Surely, if there was any sincerity and openness in them at all, they could see that bringing deliverance to a man on the Sabbath was in keeping with, not a violation of, the law of God. In this way, Jesus wanted to show them the impossibility of their earning salvation by the law and the hopelessness of their condition. It is this that Jesus proceeds to tell them, which we shall look into next time, if the Lord is willing.
This article from God's Point of View was an original text authored by Reverend D. Earl Cripe and has been read by an AI voice clone. For more information, check the links in the info section below. Read more at godspointofview.com. A copy of this book is available from Amazon in Kindle and paperback format. Link in the description.